Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to constantly explain yourself, your choices, your thoughts, your silence, to people who will never truly understand you? It's a strange kind of prison, isn't it? You speak, you clarify, you defend, and somehow the more you try to be understood, the less people actually see you. But what if I told you that the moment you stop explaining yourself, everything changes? What if the real transformation begins, not when you speak louder, but when you decide to stop speaking at all? Machiavelli understood this truth centuries ago. He saw that the most powerful individuals are not the ones who shout to be heard, but the ones who can command attention through silence. Because silence is not weakness, it's control. It's the art of letting others fill the void with their own imagination. And imagination, as every strategist knows, is far more powerful than explanation. You see, when you stop explaining yourself, you remove the need to be approved. You step out of the emotional cage, built by validation, and step into the mental space of authority. You stop chasing respect and start radiating it. Think about it. How many times have you tried to justify something to someone who already made up their mind about you? How often have you felt drained after explaining your intentions, only to be misunderstood again? You already know this feeling. It's the energy drain that happens when you trade your peace for someone else's perception. But here's the dark truth. Machiavelli would whisper, those who need to explain are already losing ground, because the more you justify, the more you reveal, and every revelation gives others a piece of your power. When you stop explaining yourself, you create mystery, and mystery commands curiosity. People begin to wonder who you really are, what you're thinking, and why you're so calm. They project their own fears, desires, and doubts onto your silence. You become a mirror, reflecting what they want to see, while keeping your truth untouchable. This is the silent shift Machiavelli wrote about, the transformation from needing to be understood to mastering perception itself. But make no mistake, this is not about arrogance or indifference. It's about strategy. It's about reclaiming your inner authority and no longer allowing the world to define your worth through its confusion. Power begins the moment you no longer feel the need to prove it, and that's when the world starts to take you seriously, without you ever having to explain a thing. So what happens inside you when you stop justifying yourself? What shifts in your energy, your confidence, your presence? Fica comigo até o final, because what you're about to discover next might change the way you see silence and the way you understand power forever. And maybe you've felt that moment too, the quiet decision to stop explaining, to let your actions speak louder than your words. It's liberating, isn't it? That calm that comes when you realize you don't need to convince anyone anymore. You just live, move, and act from a place of inner certainty. That's the shift Machiavelli understood. When you no longer need permission to be yourself, you become untouchable. If this idea resonates with you, take a second to share what part of it hit you the hardest. Maybe it reminded you of a moment when you chose silence over justification, or when walking away spoke louder than any argument could. Leave a comment below, and let's build something together. A space where people like you can think deeper, question differently, and grow stronger through reflection. And if you've been feeling that quiet pull to explore more of these truths about power, psychology, and self-mastery, then don't forget to like this video. It might seem like a small gesture, but it tells the algorithm that this message matters, that people still care about wisdom in a noisy world. Your like helps this message reach others who are searching for the same clarity and inner strength you are. And of course, if you want to keep diving into the mindset of great thinkers like Machiavelli, Jung, and Nietzsche, subscribe to Legacy Wisdom. This channel exists because of people like you, those who seek not just knowledge, but understanding. Every new subscriber makes it possible to continue sharing these ideas that challenge the way we think about power, control, and transformation. So stay with me, because what comes next goes even deeper into the Machiavellian truth behind silence, and how mastering it can quietly change everything about the way you move through the world. Most people don't realize how much energy they waste trying to be understood. They spend their days explaining themselves, why they made a certain decision, why they acted a certain way, why their silence shouldn't be mistaken for indifference, and yet the more they try to justify themselves, the more misunderstood they become. It's an endless loop of defense and disappointment, a psychological trap that drains confidence and power. Machiavelli would say that every explanation is a small surrender, a quiet admission that someone else's opinion still defines your peace. When you over-explain, you hand people a map of your inner world, They learn what triggers you, what offends you, what you crave. And once they see that, they can use it. That's why the need to be understood can become one of the most dangerous addictions of the human mind. Because the moment you start defending yourself, you stop directing your own narrative. You move from author to character in a story someone else is writing. The strong know this, and that's why they choose silence. Not out of pride, but out of strategy. This isn't about hiding or pretending. It's about control, emotional and psychological control. When you stop explaining, you reclaim your energy. You stop leaking it through endless clarification and start channeling it toward growth, toward transformation. The truth is, not everyone deserves access to your reasoning. Some people aren't looking for understanding, they're looking for weakness. And when you explain yourself too much, you give them the blueprint of your boundaries. Machiavelli understood that the less people know about your motives, the more powerful your presence becomes. Think about the last time you felt misunderstood and tried to fix it. You probably replayed the conversation in your head, searching for better words, trying to prove your intentions were pure. But the more you talked, the worse it felt. That's because you weren't trying to clarify. You were trying to be accepted, and acceptance is never found through justification. It's found through alignment with your own truth. Once you understand that, something inside you shifts. You realize that peace doesn't come from being understood, but from no longer needing to be. Now I want to go even deeper into this idea, into what really happens when you detach from that need for validation, and how that quiet decision reshapes your entire mindset from the inside out. Write in the comments, "I'm done explaining." Silence has a psychology of its own. It speaks in ways that words never can. When you stop explaining yourself, people don't just hear the absence of sound, they feel it. They begin to wonder what you're thinking, what you might do next, what you truly mean. That uncertainty changes the dynamic completely. It shifts the balance of power, because while you remain composed, their minds start working overtime to fill in the blanks. And in that quiet space, imagination takes control. Imagination is louder than any truth you could offer, and often far more powerful. This is where silence becomes strategy. It's not passive or weak, it's intentional. Every word you don't say becomes an invisible move on the chessboard of perception. You no longer reveal what you think. You allow others to reveal who they are through how they react to your quiet. Some will feel respect, sensing your self-control. Others will feel fear, mistaking your composure for coldness. And a few will feel fascination, drawn to the mystery they can't decode. Silence turns you into a mirror. People project their own insecurities, desires, and judgments onto you, while you remain untouched by their noise. Psychologically, silence triggers what's called cognitive tension, the discomfort people feel when they don't know enough. The human mind craves closure, and when you deny it, you become unforgettable. They replay your words, your expressions, your pauses, trying to decode your meaning. Machiavelli understood this game better than anyone. The less you reveal, the more control you have over the narrative, because what is left unsaid always echoes louder in the mind than what is spoken clearly. But silence also transforms you. When you learn to stay quiet, you start hearing more. Your intuition sharpens, your awareness expands. You begin to recognize manipulation, hidden motives, the subtle shifts in energy around you, and in that awareness lies real power. You no longer waste energy reacting to everything. You become deliberate, calculated, strategic. You move differently, speak less, and achieve more. This is the paradox Machiavelli understood so deeply. By saying less, you influence more. By holding back, you gain control. And by choosing silence, you create an aura of strength that words could never build. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, into how perception itself becomes a weapon when mastered, and how silence used with intention can shape the way the world sees you long before you ever open your mouth. Write in the comments, "Silence is power." Machiavelli understood one of the most uncomfortable truths about human nature. Perception is stronger than reality. In his world, and in ours, it's not what you truly are that defines how others treat you, but what you appear to be. People rarely see the full picture. They see symbols, gestures, and fragments of behavior that their minds piece together into a story. And here lies the secret. The one who controls perception controls the story. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop letting others write your narrative. You step away from defense and begin to play offense, shaping the image you project with precision and intention. When you over-explain, You hand your power to the audience. You allow them to dissect your motives, challenge your integrity, and question your strength. But when you choose silence, you remove their ammunition. They can speculate, but they can't confirm. And in the absence of clarity, they often assume strength. Mystery fills the gaps that words once exposed. It makes people think twice before crossing you, because uncertainty breeds caution. Even a small amount of mystery can make ordinary behavior seem extraordinary, because the human mind is wired to elevate what it doesn't fully understand. Think about leaders, strategists, or even artists who never reveal everything. Their silence makes them magnetic. The less they explain, the more powerful their image becomes. Machiavelli believed this was not manipulation, it was mastery, because the world judges through appearances, not intentions. By controlling what people see, you indirectly control what they believe. This doesn't mean being fake. It means being intentional about the energy you project, the way you move, and the moments you choose to stay silent. Every pause, every unanswered question, every calm reaction builds an image that speaks louder than any speech could. Refusing to explain isn't arrogance, it's architecture. You are designing how others perceive your presence. When you do this consciously, you stop reacting to perception and start crafting it. You move from being observed to being studied. You shift from being predictable to becoming enigmatic. And that enigma is what keeps people intrigued, cautious, and sometimes even loyal. This is the Machiavellian rule of perception in its purest form. Never let others see the full pattern. Let them think they know you, while never truly understanding you. Because control doesn't come from being seen clearly, it comes from being seen strategically. Now, I want to go even deeper into this idea, into the hidden relationship between perception and detachment, and how emotional distance becomes the foundation of unshakable strength. Write in the comments, I control my image. Detachment is often misunderstood. People think it means not caring, being cold, or cutting themselves off from emotion, but that's not what Machiavelli meant. True detachment isn't about distance from others, it's about dominance over yourself. It's the quiet decision to no longer let emotions control your actions or validation define your worth. When you stop explaining yourself, you naturally detach from the need to be seen, understood, or approved. And in that detachment, something powerful happens. You become untouchable. Machiavelli believed that emotional control was the foundation of all influence. The person who can stay calm while everyone else is reacting holds the real power. Because emotions make you predictable, and predictability is vulnerability. When you detach, you create a kind of emotional gravity. People sense your composure and are drawn to it, even intimidated by it. They can't manipulate what they can't read. You're no longer pulled into their chaos. You become the calm that others orbit around. This kind of detachment doesn't make you heartless, it makes you intentional. You still feel everything, but you choose what deserves your reaction. You observe without absorbing. You understand without needing to interfere. And in doing so, you rise above the emotional noise that consumes most people's energy. This is what Machiavelli called mastery of self, the ability to act with strategy, not impulse. When you detach from the need for validation, you start seeing things more clearly. You stop seeking approval from those who misunderstand you and start focusing on what truly matters: your growth, your purpose, your peace. You realize that not every battle is worth fighting, not every opinion deserves a defense, and not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected. Detachment frees you from the exhausting game of constant justification. It gives you back your energy, your focus, and your edge. There's a moment when detachment becomes visible, when people notice you're no longer reactive. They sense something has shifted. You don't chase, you don't explain, you don't compete for attention. You simply move with quiet certainty. That's the moment when influence begins to flow naturally toward you, because people trust stability even when they can't understand it. They follow the one who seems unshaken, the one who doesn't need to prove anything. This is the essence of power through detachment. You win not by fighting harder, but by staying centered while others lose balance. You influence not by persuading, but by embodying calm strength. Now I want to go even deeper into this idea, into the hidden fear that makes people resist detachment, and why being misunderstood might actually be the strongest form of freedom you can ever experience. Write in the comments, I choose calm over chaos. Most people spend their entire lives terrified of being misunderstood. They shape their words carefully, soften their tone, and adjust their behavior to appear kind, agreeable, and harmless. They think that if everyone sees them as good, they'll be safe. But the truth is, this constant need to be understood is just disguised insecurity. It's the fear of rejection dressed as virtue. Machiavelli would look at that fear and smile. To him, misunderstanding wasn't a threat, it was a shield. Let them misunderstand, he would say. Their confusion protects you. When others can't define you, they can't predict you. And when they can't predict you, they can't control you. Most people are too busy trying to clear their name, defend their character, or explain their motives. But every word of defense ties them deeper to the judgment they're trying to escape. It's a psychological trap, because the more you insist you're good, the more people wonder if you're not. The strongest people understand that reputation is shaped by actions, not explanations. They know that sometimes you must accept being misunderstood in the short term to be respected in the long run. This doesn't mean being careless with your image. It means being strategic with your silence. If someone misreads your intentions, let them. If they question your motives, stay calm. Their assumptions will expose more about them than about you. Machiavelli knew that the need to be seen as good was the Achilles heel of the powerful, because the moment you crave moral approval, you give away leverage. The world doesn't reward goodness. It rewards effectiveness. Effectiveness requires emotional distance. It means understanding that not every battle for understanding is worth fighting. You don't need to prove your purity to those who thrive on doubt. You don't need to correct every rumor or justify every move. The moment you stop trying to be perceived as right, you begin to act with true freedom, because real confidence doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being unshakable in your purpose, regardless of who misunderstands it. And something interesting happens when you embrace misunderstanding instead of running from it. People start to respect you. They may not always like you, but they recognize that you can't be easily swayed. And in a world that thrives on noise and reaction, that kind of composure stands out as strength. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, into how silence and unpredictability create a social advantage so powerful that even your enemies start playing by your rules. Write in the comments, let them misunderstand. In every social dynamic, whether in leadership, relationships, or conflict, there's an invisible balance of power that's shaped not by who speaks the most, but by who speaks the least. The one who talks constantly tries to control the narrative, but the one who listens, who withholds, who lets silence stretch, becomes the center of gravity in the room. That's the social advantage of mystery. People are drawn to what they can't fully read. They lean in closer, trying to decode you, and in doing so, they place you at the center of their attention. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He knew that unpredictability creates power because it forces others to adapt to you. When people never quite know what you'll say, how you'll react, or what you're thinking, they begin to move carefully around you. It's a subtle psychological dominance, one built not through aggression, but through restraint. You become the variable they can't control, the unknown that keeps them slightly on edge, and that tension works in your favor. In leadership, this kind of mystery translates into authority. The calm, composed leader who doesn't reveal everything commands more respect than the one constantly explaining or defending decisions. Their silence creates anticipation. Their words, when finally spoken, carry more weight. In relationships, mystery becomes magnetism. People are wired to chase what they don't fully understand. When you stop revealing everything about yourself, others fill the gaps with fascination. They project meaning onto your actions, often overvaluing your presence because they can't fully grasp it. Even in conflict, silence and unpredictability are weapons. When you don't react immediately, you disarm the other person. They expect an emotional response, but your stillness forces them into discomfort. They start questioning their position, doubting their assumptions, and revealing more than they intended. You hold the upper hand simply by refusing to play the emotional game. This doesn't mean manipulation. It means mastering your energy. The mysterious individual doesn't act out of fear, but out of control. They know that power isn't about constant movement. It's about making others move around you. And the less predictable you are, the more stable your influence becomes. The world teaches us to overshare, to always explain, to always react. But Machiavelli's wisdom flips that idea upside down. Real strength lies in what you choose not to reveal, because mystery doesn't just attract, it protects. It keeps your power contained, your motives hidden, and your presence amplified. Now I want to go even deeper into this idea, into how this kind of internal mystery reshapes your own psychology, turning your silence into a catalyst for transformation, self-mastery, and lasting confidence. Write in the comments, "I move in silence." Something powerful begins to happen inside you when you stop explaining yourself. At first, it feels uncomfortable, almost unnatural. You've spent years, maybe a lifetime, trying to prove your intentions, justify your worth, and explain your every move. But as the noise fades, you start to notice something deeper. Your focus shifts from proving to becoming. You no longer waste energy convincing others who you are. You start building yourself quietly, from the inside out. And that shift, subtle yet profound, is where transformation begins. Without the constant pressure to be understood, your mind becomes clearer. You realize how much mental weight you were carrying by trying to manage other people's perceptions. Every time you explained, you were seeking validation. Every time you justified, you were giving away power. When that stops, your energy returns to its rightful place. Within you, you start investing that same focus into growth, discipline, and mastery. The external world loses its grip on your emotions, and you begin to feel something rare: self-sufficiency. Machiavelli would say that true strength is built in silence. Because it's in silence that you confront yourself without distraction. You begin to recognize your patterns, your triggers, your fears, and you start refining them. The person who once sought approval now seeks progress. You evolve from someone reactive to someone intentional, from needing recognition to embodying confidence. And soon, you realize that the respect you once tried to earn through words now comes naturally through presence. This transformation changes how you move through life. You stop chasing opportunities that don't align with you. You stop over-explaining to people who can't meet you at your depth. You become selective with your energy. Your calm becomes your authority. People begin to feel your confidence before you even speak, and that quiet strength draws more power than any argument ever could. Internally, it feels like coming home to yourself. You stop performing and start existing. You start to understand that validation is fleeting, but self-trust endures. And that's where true independence lives, not in isolation, but in the freedom of no longer needing external approval to know your value. You no longer look outward for identity. You create it inwardly through discipline, clarity, and self-respect. And once you've tasted that kind of inner stability, you can't go back. The constant need to explain, to prove, to be liked, it feels small compared to the peace of simply being. That's the invisible transformation Machiavelli hinted at. Power, rooted not in domination but in self-mastery. Now I want to go even deeper into this idea, into how this ruthless mindset, quiet, disciplined, and self-assured, becomes the foundation of true influence and lasting confidence. Write in the comments, "I'm becoming stronger in silence." The word ruthless often makes people uncomfortable. They imagine cruelty, arrogance, or manipulation. But in the world of Machiavelli, ruthlessness had nothing to do with malice. It was about discipline. To be ruthless, in his sense, was to strip away everything unnecessary. The emotional reactions, the constant explanations, the endless need to be liked. It was the mindset of someone who values clarity over comfort, results over excuses, and control over chaos. The ruthless individual doesn't move through life cold. They move through life calculated. This kind of mindset isn't born from aggression. It's born from awareness. You begin to see that emotions, while powerful, can also be traps. They pull you into impulsive reactions that reveal too much. Machiavelli taught that silence, control, and patience win more than any burst of passion ever could. The ruthless mindset is not about dominating others. It's about mastering yourself so completely that no one can dominate you. It's self-command turned into art. In practice, this means observing rather than reacting. When you feel anger, you study it. When you sense opportunity, you wait until the right moment to act. Every decision becomes intentional, every move purposeful. This doesn't make you emotionless, it makes you precise. You stop wasting energy on what doesn't serve your direction. That's where true power comes from. Focus without distraction, conviction without validation. Machiavelli's ruthless man is not cruel because cruelty is impulsive, emotional, and noisy. Ruthlessness is quiet. It's the stillness before a decisive move, the ability to stay calm when others panic. It's the understanding that your energy is finite and must be spent strategically, not emotionally. Most people burn out defending their ego. The ruthless conserve their strength building their legacy. When you cultivate this mindset, you begin to feel an internal shift. You stop needing the world's approval and start moving according to your own plan. You're no longer swayed by opinions, insults, or praise. You begin to see life like a chessboard, and every silence, every restraint becomes a move toward victory. The ruthless mindset is simply the mature form of strength, intelligence guided by control, and it's in this space that silence becomes your greatest ally. You learn that words can be weapons, but silence can be strategy. You don't need to prove who you are. You let time, results, and composure speak louder than explanations ever could. Now I want to go even deeper into this idea, into how adopting this disciplined calm transforms not only how others perceive you, but how you perceive yourself, and how that quiet transformation changes everything about your relationship with power. Write in the comments, "Discipline is my power." There's a strange paradox in human nature. The more you try to be understood, the less people truly listen. The more you justify yourself, the smaller your presence becomes. But when you stop explaining, when you decide that your actions will speak in your place, everything begins to shift. People start paying attention, not because you demanded their respect, but because you earned it in silence. That's the quiet power Machiavelli understood so well. Authority is not proclaimed, it's perceived. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop begging for understanding. And that's when people finally start paying attention. That line is more than reflection. It's liberation. Because the moment you let go of the need to convince others, you step into a level of self-mastery most never reach. You begin to see that power doesn't come from noise, but from composure. It doesn't come from being the loudest in the room, but from being the one who doesn't need to speak to be felt. Machiavelli's wisdom wasn't meant only for rulers. It was meant for anyone ready to rule their own life, to be strategic with their words, to move with intention, to lead through presence rather than persuasion. He knew that real influence doesn't require endless justification. It's built through consistency, restraint, and the unshakable calm of someone who knows their value. When you embody that kind of stillness, people start seeking your approval instead of the other way around. You become the reference point, the person others measure their reactions against. Think about the times you've over-explained yourself to people who were never listening in the first place. The energy you spent clarifying, defending, and proving was never about truth. It was about fear. Fear of being judged, rejected, or misunderstood. But once you stop fearing those things, you become free. Misunderstanding no longer feels like a threat. It becomes a filter. It shows you who sees your essence and who only sees your surface. And that clarity is priceless. The silence Machiavelli spoke of isn't emptiness, it's presence. It's the ability to hold your ground when others expect you to bend. It's the confidence that your truth doesn't need translation. This silence is not weakness. It's a declaration of self-trust, the kind of trust that radiates through every gesture, every pause, every glance. It's what makes the powerful so magnetic. They don't chase attention, yet they command it. When you learn to be comfortable with being misunderstood, when you stop explaining yourself, you cross a threshold. You no longer need validation to feel complete. You don't seek approval, you attract respect. And it's in that stillness that transformation happens. You stop reacting to the world, and the world begins reacting to you. That's when silence becomes your language of power. So maybe it's time to stop defending yourself to those who've already made their judgments. Maybe it's time to stop explaining what your intuition already knows is right. Let your silence be your statement, your discipline your proof, and your results your voice. Because when you stop begging to be understood, you finally become undeniable. If this message resonates with you, it's because you're ready to step into a higher level of power and self-mastery. Subscribe to Legacy Wisdom for more lessons from minds like Machiavelli, Jung, and Nietzsche, and leave a comment below with the word power if you're done explaining yourself. This is where the transformation begins, in the silence that no longer hides you but defines you. If you've made it all the way here, it probably means something in this message spoke to you. Maybe it reminded you of a moment when silence gave you strength, or when walking away said more than words ever could. If that's you, leave a comment below and write, "I'm with you till the end. I always Read what you share, and it's your reflections that keep this channel alive. It's how these ideas keep evolving together. If this video gave you something valuable, something to think about, give it a like. It's a simple way to show that this kind of content matters, that wisdom and depth still have a place on this platform. And if you want to keep diving deeper into the minds of Machiavelli, Jung, and Nietzsche, subscribe to Legacy Wisdom. Every week, we explore the kind of knowledge that changes how you think, move, and lead. There's another video right here that continues this journey. It ties perfectly with what you've just heard. Click it, and let's keep going a little further together.